Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome to my channel. I am exploring with Kinsey, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than what we normally do here on this channel. Normally we're out exploring, or I'm doing a podcast series. Today I am going to be showing you how to wax and tune your snowboard for the upcoming season, or even if later on you decide, hey, I want to know how to be able to do my own wax and tune on my snowboard. I'm no professional. I learned from other YouTubers how to wax and tune a board, so don't come at me in the comment section. I don't claim to be a professional, but this could actually help other people be able to wax and tune their own boards and maybe save some money doing so as well. I'll link everything that I use down in the description box, so if you want to go and get your own waxing kit, then you can do so. I have probably 2 or 3 different types of tuning kits, but I'll just be using one today. I have a family member's snowboard, and with snowboard season just around the corner, I figured his board needs a really good wax and tune-up job, so I figured I would show how to wax and tune a board today. Also, shout out to my dad because this was a video request from him. So, without further ado, let's get into today's video. Alright, so this board is a Rome SDS board. I don't know if you can see very well on the camera, but there's some pretty good dry spots here on the board. Even down here, there's some pretty good dry spots that need to be fixed. And it has Burton bindings. It's a kid's board, if you couldn't tell. Pretty tiny. So we're going to give it a good tune-up job as well, because the edges they could use a little bit of a sharpening. And other than that, other than needing a wax job and a sharpening tune-up, it shouldn't be too difficult to do. So me is I like to remove the bindings because this board's a little bit dirty, so I'm going to clean up the top, make it look new again. But first thing I do usually is take off the bindings, so I have a flat surface to work on. I don't exactly have the best setup to do a tune-up job, but I'm working with what I got, so don't come at me about this. So first we're going to take off the bindings. And this is his first snowboard season, so I'm not too worried about how I place the bindings back on, because we're probably going to have to adjust them anyways once he gets on the board. So I want this to be as comfortable for him as possible. And nice and clean too, because it's just nice to have a clean board that first ride of the season. Okay, so we got one binding off. Let's get the other binding off. Honestly, this board doesn't look like it's in too bad condition. We got it from a Play It Again sports store. We figured it's his first time snowboarding, and we didn't really want to spend too much money on a brand new board that he's just going to outgrow. So get these bindings off, and then give it a good old clean over on the top, and then we'll clean off the bottom. Okay, so now that we got the bindings off, we're just going to spray down the top real quick. I just use soap and water, just kind of my preference, because it kind of keeps the board a little bit clean. It helps clean the board and gets all that dirt and grime off from the previous user. Gonna give it a good rub down with the soap and water. This side looks like it could use a little bit more. especially near where the bindings go. It looks like it's got some pretty good dirt in it. So this is my wax kit. It is a winter rail wax kit. Got it off of Amazon. I'll link it down in the description box, but it comes with everything that you kind of need. Comes with your tune-up, comes with your wax. I bought those myself, but it comes with P-Tex, comes with sandpaper, and as well as a sharpener for your edges. It also comes with an iron and an apron. So before I start waxing, I'm just going to do the same thing that I did with the top. Clean it off with some soap and water. I know some people use base cleaner. I've tried it and I didn't really like it, but there's some people who 100% won't use anything else. I personally just prefer soap and water. So, just gonna give the board a little bit of a cleanup on the bottom before I start waxing it. So this is my edge sharpener that comes with the winter rail waxing kit, and some people prefer to wax then sharpen their edges. I always have seen it as sharpening your edges first, then waxing your board. So I guess tell me what you prefer down in the comments, but I prefer to sharpen then wax, but you always want to sharpen in one direction. Same with the flip side, always sharpen in one direction, don't change your direction. And the point of sharpening your edges is just so you have better edges for when you are writing and also for when you're stopping. So, alright, so this is my iron from Winter Rail, and the wax that I'm going to be using today is from Eon, I think. I'm not positive. I will link the kind of wax I use in the description. Always smells really good, so it's one thing I know about this wax is it always smells really good. It smells like what I think Hawaii probably smells like. Alright, so you don't want to put your iron too hot because before you wax, you want to heat up the base coat. And if you have your iron too hot, you can actually ruin the bottom side of your board with too much heat. So what you want to do is you just want to go from top all the way down to the bottom in basically circular motions, getting the board warmed up to what the iron's at. That way, when you place the wax down, it just absorbs the wax instead of when you scrape it, instead of all the wax coming off or ruining the base paint or the base coat. You're just wanting to add to that. Also to bring back moisture to these dry spots. So like I said, just start at one end and heat up your iron on your board. And you can kind of feel it through just touching the top of the board. You can tell if the iron is too hot or if you need it to be a little bit warmer. I usually set mine to 250. I've noticed that that's a good temperature for the board. It helps bring out whatever dry spots there may be and just help fill in those dry spots when you are laying your wax down. And it feels like this board has never seen a wax job. The only reason I say that is because I can see the dry spots sort of coming out, but not as much as I would like them to. It also just feels rougher than a board that is frequently waxed. I think the recommendation for waxing a board that isn't straight from the factory is about every 3 to 4 trips. So usually after your fourth snowboard trip, you should probably be waxing your board. You don't need to tune it up every single time you ride, but you should be waxing your board about every 4 times you go. Or at the beginning of every season if you did not wax your board before the end of the previous season, which I did not do. So I know my board needs waxing. I just waxed another family member's board for this season. Thankfully, I'm not seeing any too big of divots or any divots in the surface, so I won't have to use any of the P-Tex today because P-Tex is a pain in the butt. And like I said, you just want to go in those circular motions all the way down from one end to another end. That way the board will absorb as much of that wax as it needs. I'm just going over some of those dry spots, hopefully to bring some of that heat into them. I can see it working on the edges just a tad bit, so hopefully when I wax it, hopefully that side of the board will take as much of the wax as it needs. Okay, so now that we have got the board warmed up for the wax, we're just going to go ahead and place the wax directly onto the iron and spread it across the board. Sometimes it can take a little while to get that wax heated up just to the right setting, but once it gets going, it gets going. I'm just gonna spread it out throughout the board. Iron just a little bit. Focus on those dry spots. It's funny because when I first started waxing my own board, I just used your regular old iron from like Walmart, and then I finally decided to upgrade, and my parents bought me this wax kit for Christmas a few years ago, so it's been really handy for me. Alright, and like that, the board is covered in wax. But we have the whole board waxed from that end to that end, and we got the dry spots covered as well, so we're gonna go ahead and wax that in, spread it out. So turn the iron back up to 250 and just start again, same concept in a circular motion on the little wax droplets. And obviously this is a kid's board, so this board isn't going to take me as long as an adult board would. But the concept's the same for both kids and adult boards. Just basically want to get that wax spread out and spread onto the board. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that that wax covers any of the previous wax that was on there. So you don't want to see any of the clear coat. You want to just spread that wax over that. That way the clear coat can absorb the wax. And same thing with spreading out the wax. I know I turned up the heat when I laid it out on the board, but you don't want to go over on heat because you can still damage the board when you're spreading out that wax. And the whole point of waxing is to help preserve the board and give it a little bit longer of a lifespan. I have a Roxy board that's a hybrid from 2015, and I learned how to wax my first season because I wanted to be able to preserve that board as long as possible because it's just such a nice board. And when I first learned how to wax a board, I literally went to Walmart and bought like one of those irons that you like iron your clothes with, and that's literally what I used to wax my board with for probably like 4 or 5 years, and it did the job, I'll say that. Is it the best thing to use? Probably not, but when you're a broke college kid, you use what resources are available for you. Trying to focus on these dry spots because I really want that wax to take right in those sections. I hope that you guys are enjoying today's video. I know it's a little bit different and a little bit, probably some might find this boring, but I hope that this video actually does help somebody out there to learn how to wax and tune their own board. Again, I'm no professional, but I have waxed a fair share of boards to kind of say I know what I'm doing. We have all the clear coat spots covered, so now you can go ahead and turn off your iron, let it cool down. I prefer to let the wax sit for a little bit before I go into scraping, so I'm going to let this board cool down just a little bit before I go into scraping the board. So the board has cooled down quite a bit, and I've let that wax sit here for a while where that dry spot was, so We're going to go ahead and scrape off all this excess wax. I don't know if you can see it very well on camera, what that excess wax looks like, but there's quite a bit of it, so we're going to go ahead and scrape that off. Same rule with waxing or scraping the wax off as when you're sharpening the board. Do it in one direction. I prefer to scrape in the direction that the board is going to be ridden. So this is the front of the board, this is the tail end of the board. So we're just going to go ahead and flip the board this way and scrape going from nose end to tail end. I prefer using a plastic scraper. Some people prefer a metal scraper. I feel like that's too risky to do on the board because, I don't know, I get nervous with metal scrapers. I feel like you're going to damage the board using a metal scraper. So I prefer the plastic scrapers. Gets the job done. Doesn't do damage to the board either. So we're going to get into scraping the board. I usually leave the ends for after I'm done scraping, just because the nose and the tail can be a little bit more difficult because they are rounded and they have a slight curve to them. So I prefer to do the main board or the main part of the board first, then I'll do nose, and then I'll do tail. So, and you don't really have to put a whole lot of pressure into taking that wax off. You just want to get it, enough so that you don't have chunks of leftover wax. You're just going to take your scraper down from one end to the other. Like I said, you'll know a section is good and doesn't have any more excess wax once you stop pulling up all that excess wax. When you run your scraper back over it like this. So my camera died halfway through scraping this, so I had to throw it on the charger. Did end up having to pull out the metal scraper. I don't like using it just because it will pull up so much wax, much more than you want sometimes, but the curves are just not working with my plastic scraper, so we're going to finish off this end of the board with the scraper, and then we'll go on to this side of the board and finish that end. But with the metal scrapers, you don't want to be too rough because they do pull more wax off than sometimes you intend. So you gotta just kind of be a little bit more gentle with the metal scrapers. Like I said, I don't like using them too much, but his board just was not working with the plastic scraper on the curves, so, which is interesting because his curves they're not much more curved than my board, so I find it interesting that his curves were not taking the plastic scraper. So, and it's looking like that is what's left of that side. No more, not too much more wax is coming off, and I don't want to take off too much of the wax with the metal scraper just because, like I said, the metal scraper will take off more than what you sometimes want. And like I said, you just want to take a quick, if you want to know if you're done with whatever side, just, go from one end to the other and scrape that excess wax off. I'm not getting too much more on his end, so I think I'm getting pretty close to being able to move to the other end of this board and finish it up and whatnot. So alright, let's get to the other end. I don't think I'm going to get much more wax from this end. I don't think. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the bulk of the wax that's wanting to come off. Left now is to do the cleanup portion. Got all the excess wax off. Board looks super good now compared to earlier. I don't know if you can tell very well on camera, but those dry spots are completely gone. Both ends are waxed, so we're just going to do a quick cleanup on the bottom side, wipe it down, get rid of any sort of little shavings that may have stayed around. I just usually spray it down with water the second go around. No need for the soap because I already cleaned it. Water just gets off all that extra little shavings that may have stuck to the board after using the scraper. But once that's all done, we just gotta get the bindings back on and the board is all done. There you have it. There is a clean, fresh, waxed board. I think it looks a lot better than it did before. Edges are all sharpened and the board looks brand new compared to what it looked like earlier, at least in my opinion. I almost forgot to put my sticker. It's just a sticker of the channel. So all the boys' boards are getting one. My board has one, so everybody gets A nice little sticker. Put it at 12 and 12, and we'll decide later if he needs a different stance. But I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you are not subscribed, don't forget to do so if you want to see more videos. I might do one more snowboard waxing just for what it would look like on an adult board. Like I said, it's not much different, but I might do one on an adult board still. But other than that, I'm going to get these bindings on here, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, night, whatever time of day you are watching this. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I do have sticker merch now, so that's pretty cool. And I want to just say thank you to all my subscribers who have stuck around and followed me on this journey. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks we get a snowboarding video up. All right, I'll see you guys later.